I do is win, 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 no matter what.
Here to speak about the wins of the Supreme Court of the United States, please welcome founder and president of Article 3 Project, Mike Davis, and Republican National Lawyers Association Chief Counsel, Lisa Dixon.
And they say that, 'cause all I do is win.
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here early on a beautiful Saturday morning. We're going to start with some statistics because everyone loves numbers early on a Saturday morning. Since President Trump took office, he has issued 202 executive orders. He has had 406 lawsuits filed against his administration, and he's had 21 wins at the U.S. Supreme Court. Mike, we throw the term lawfare around all the time. What exactly is lawfare? How is it different from a legitimate use of the courts?
Lawfare is largely when Democrats use the legal system to go after their political enemies because they can't win at the ballot box. And we saw this for 3 years before the election when Joe Biden and his team went after President Trump. They tried to throw him in prison 4 times for non-crimes. They tried to bankrupt him for non-fraud. They tried to take him off the ballot illegally, unconstitutionally in Colorado, my home state, and Maine and elsewhere. They even tried to take off his head when Joe Biden intentionally underfunded President Trump's Secret Service protection twice, said that Trump was the gravest threat to democracy, compared him to Hitler, said he's a fascist and his supporters like us are garbage. I would say if we want to look at garbage, go to a Biden family reunion. And then said to put a bullseye on Trump. And what the hell did Joe Biden think was going to happen when he did that? And so the Article 3 Project, the group I lead, we did 5,000 media hits supporting and defending President Trump after the Mar-a-Lago raid to go get back damning Crossfire hurricane records. You're going to see more news on that in the coming weeks. And we made damn sure that President Trump got back into the White House because he has a job to finish, right? And the American people, President Trump campaigned on the fact that he is going to secure our border. He's going to expel illegal aliens, particularly Tren de Aragua, an MS-13 terrorist, and he's going to cut waste, fraud, and abuse. And President Trump, the American people like what they heard. 312 electoral votes, all 7 swing states, including Michigan. The popular vote, good work, Michigan. You got your stuff together this time, that's good. That's right. You guys have a really good team here, and I appreciate the Michigan Republican Party and all the volunteers here. You guys really delivered this election. It was critical. And so President Trump won 312 electoral votes, all 7 swing states. The popular vote, he kept the House. He won a comfortable margin in the Senate. He has a broad electoral mandate from the American people to lead. And President Trump is doing the unthinkable. He's actually delivering on his campaign promise. He's actually doing what he promised American voters he would do. He's exercising his core Article 2 power as the commander-in-chief to secure our border and to expel illegal aliens. He's exercising his core Article 2 power as the chief executive officer to cut waste, fraud, and abuse, to make sure, for example, that we're not sending money to Hamas terrorists who are killing Americans under the guise of Gaza humanitarian aid. And the American people like what they voted for. They strongly support him. President Trump is not stealing Congress's Article 1 legislative power. President Trump is not stealing the Supreme Court's Article 3 judicial power. If he were doing either of those things, I would be the first one to tell the courts to stop him. But he's not. He's exercising core Article 2 executive power. And Democrats don't have the House, they don't have the Senate, and they don't have the White House. And so what are they doing? You have Democrat plaintiffs and Democrat attorneys running to Democrat judges in third world Marxist hellholes like New York and DC, Detroit, other places, San Francisco, LA, and they're getting these activist judges issuing these illegal, unconstitutional orders to stop the president from exercising his core Article 2 executive power. And this is unacceptable. This is truly unacceptable. It is not judicial review. This is judicial sabotage. So we're going to talk about that today.
Well, let's talk about one of those judges, Judge Boasberg from the D.C. District Court.
Boasberg the clown.
Yeah. What has he done that's so outrageous?
This guy is, is he still the chief judge in the D.C. District? He's still the chief judge. He's an Obama appointee, of course, because Obama and Biden put in left-wing radicals in these jobs. And Jeb Boasberg, he's trying to sabotage the president of the United States, and it relates to the president's core Article 2 commander-in-chief power. When President Trump is doing what he promised American voters he would do, and he's expelling terrorists, right? And Jeb Boasberg, this was crazy. So Jeb Boasberg found out that President Trump was going to expel terrorists from Texas, and it wasn't even, so that how the federal judges work is that if they work on the weekends, it's the duty docket. And so they have judges rotate through the duty docket so the judges don't get stuck working every week. And so you have one judge who has the duty docket for if cases come in and you need to have quick action or emergency action. It was not even Jeb Boasberg's duty docket that weekend in D.C., and he just ran into his courtroom, opened up his courtroom, and coordinated with these plaintiffs to issue this lawless order where the president is expelling Tren de Aragua terrorists to El Salvador. The planes are over the Gulf of America. And Boasberg does not have jurisdiction to do this. This is in D.C. If a judge wants to deal with these terrorists, you do it through a habeas lawsuit in Texas from where these planes took off. And Boasberg from D.C. issued this order to tell the Trump administration to turn around these planes. What? Like, what the hell do you think you're the commander-in-chief, Jeb Boasberg? And so Jeb Boasberg doesn't know the fuel levels on these planes. If they turn around when they're over the Gulf of America and they crash in the Gulf of America because they don't have enough fuel, he doesn't know that. We saw the security footprint in El Salvador. We saw hundreds and probably more military, police, law enforcement officials ready to accept these Tren de Aragua terrorists, the most vicious terrorists in the Western Hemisphere. They were hanging out in Colorado where I live. They're vicious animals, right? And so we saw the security footprint with the El Salvador president to accept these. We didn't have that same footprint in America. Why the heck would we, right? Did we ever expect that a federal judge would run into his courtroom on a Saturday when it's not even his duty docket, it's not even his jurisdiction, and they're going to order planes? You're going to order the president to turn around a military operation, right? That doesn't happen. Fortunately, I have to be careful how I say this. Fortunately, those planes did not turn around, and they landed, and these terrorists are, getting fed and housed very nicely down in El Salvador, right, in a prison. But then Jeb Boasberg tried to hold Trump administration officials in contempt for ignoring his lawless order. Now, the Supreme Court finally stepped in and stopped him, but this guy, I've never done this at the Article 3 Project, as the New York Times calls it, my right-wing nonprofit. So I've never done this before. I'm calling for his impeachment because not only, and do this, go to article3project.org, article number 3project.org, and there's an action page, and one of the action items is you click on the action, take action. One of them is Jeb Boasberg, and then it connects you with both of your home state senators and then your U.S. House rep to say impeach this guy. And it's not because he was just wrong as a matter of law. I don't think that's the standard for judges. It was because Jeb Boasberg, his order was so clearly lawless, plus so dangerous to our national security. I mean, think about this. Think about the president's dealing with foreign leaders. The president can't deal with foreign leaders because these foreign leaders are going to be humiliated. He has his army waiting for these terrorists, and then the terrorists don't show up. This foreign leader is humiliated, right? This is dangerous on so many levels. And when Judges, look, this is what I say about judges. Federal judges have a modest but crucial role. Their job is to decide cases, and this is Article 3 standing under the Constitution. Their job is to decide cases and controversies of the parties properly before the courts with redressable claims. Nothing more, and the judge is here from Michigan, he knows, but nothing more, nothing less, right? That is their job. That's their Article 3 power, Article 3 standing. And when judges think that they can take off their judicial robes and put on their superhero capes, that's when they become very dangerous. So they are judges in robes and not narcissists in capes. And I think Judge Boasberg has turned into a narcissist in a cape. He thinks he's going to fly around the world and protect the American voter from our duly elected president of the United States. And that's just unacceptable. So
what has the Supreme Court generally done as these cases have come up? What have they taught us about executive power?
Well, I mean, the President of the United States, Lisa, as you know, and thank you for doing this. Thank you to Michael Thielen from the Republican National Lawyers Association. He's a warrior. He's been running the RNLA for 25 years. Lisa joins him. Lisa's here in Michigan. She's the deputy. You're the chief counsel. What are you? Deputy executive director and chief counsel, whatever. She's the number 2. So they do great work at the RNLA. I ran the Colorado chapter for many years, and then I think they just gave up on Colorado because it's gone so communist. So about the Supreme Court, this is what I would say. They started off pretty bad on a couple cases. For example, and I've been pretty vocal on this, I clerked for Justice Gorsuch, and I don't think he appreciates when I'm too crazy and vocal criticizing the Supreme Court of the United States, but too bad. So the couple cases where they really screwed this up, the Supreme Court's put an injunction on the President of the United States on this Tren de Aragua thing on Good Friday before the district court had ruled, before the Fifth Circuit had ruled, before they got briefing, and they just issued this injunction saying the president has to, first of all, the courts, you cannot enjoin the President of the United States. You can enjoin executive branch officers and lower officials, but you cannot enjoin the President of the United States. That's not constitutional. But they enjoined the President of the United States on Tren de Aragua. They left it in place for weeks. I think they finally are starting to back down because I and others went crazy. But that was really egregious. Another thing that the Supreme Court did that was very egregious is you have this D.C., and we're going to talk about this. I'm getting ahead of you, sorry, Lisa, but this D.C. Biden judge, and if I say Biden judge or Obama judge, that's almost universally left-wing political hack in a robe, right? That there's this new judge in D.C. His name's Judge Ali, right? And Judge Ali bragged that he's the first Arab and first Muslim judge on the federal bench. This guy's still a Canadian citizen, right? I don't know how the hell that's possible, but he's still a Canadian citizen, right? He didn't renounce his Canadian citizenship, so he's a Canadian citizen and an American citizen. And one of his first, he got jammed through confirmation after Trump won the White House and the Republicans won the Senate, but during that lame duck session in December before Trump and the Senate Republicans took over, Biden and the Democrats jammed this guy through. And this guy, he barely got through. And this guy is a radical left-wing activist. And one of his first decisions as a judge is when President Trump told USAID, now remember, this is the commander-in-chief. He's at his maximum power when you're dealing with foreign affairs, right? The president said to USAID, we're going to do a pause on sending all this money out the door from USAID, this money laundering operation that the Democrats and the rhinos run in D.C. We're going to do a pause. I'm going to do a national security review to make sure that we're not sending money to Hamas to kill Americans, like I said, right, under the guise of Gazan humanitarian relief. The president has the absolute power to do this as the commander-in-chief and the chief executive officer, right? Yes, Congress has the power of the purse, but the president also has to take care that our laws are faithfully executed, right? And so he has to make sure
that we're not misspending money, waste, fraud, and abuse as the chief executive officer. He has to make sure separately as the commander-in-chief that we're not funding our enemies by mistake, right? So he has those constitutional powers. This Judge Ali issued this crazy injunction, temporary restraining order, where President Trump had to send $2 billion out the door, maybe to all these Hamas friends, who knows, and not do a national security review. And the Supreme Court let this happen, right? And I was very vocally critical of that. Now at the Article 3 project, in addition to impeaching Jeb Boasberg, which you should all go on and take action on that, you should also take action on another action item we have, because of course I'm crazy. And the other action item is the federal judiciary has a $10 billion budget, right? And if the Supreme Court's gonna let Judge Ali send $2 billion out the door to his buddies and, Hamas buddies or wherever the hell this money's going, take that $2 billion, Congress should take that $2 billion right out of the federal judiciary's $10 billion annual budget, and I bet you the Supreme Court doesn't do that again. So, that's the point. These judges need to understand, again, their role. They decide cases and controversies of the parties properly before them with redressable claims, nothing more, nothing less. They are judges in robes, not superheroes in capes.
Let's talk about nationwide injunctions.
Yep. Sorry, it's 9 a.m. Lisa gave me too much coffee, and I'm already a wild man, so.
So that was the big win of last term.
And she's so nice, by the way. I don't know how Thielen teamed us up on this. But. Nationwide injunctions. That was a big case. The Supreme Court, when I'm talking about Article 3 standing, cases and controversies, these judges were essentially legislating from the bench. And so what they would do is they would issue an injunction of parties that were not, non-parties, people who were not even before the court. They would say we're gonna do an injunction on, we need injunctions, the redheads. We're gonna say all the redheads in America, we're gonna do an injunction that people can't pick on gingers, right? So, but whatever the issue was, they would just make this up and say that parties that were not before the court, they all get relief, it's all nationwide, and we're gonna do it on a temporary basis, which means it goes for 3 years until they go to trial. And it's essentially legislating from the bench. And the Supreme Court said, this is one of the good decisions out of the Supreme Court after they got their heads out of their behinds. One of the good decisions was the Supreme Court told these lower courts, you can't do this. You can't issue these nationwide injunctions. Your job, again, parties properly before the court with redressable claims. And if you're going to if you're going to take legal action, if it's beyond the parties before the court, there's something called class certification. There's Rule 23. You can do, I think is it 21 or 23? Judge, do you remember? Is it 23? Good. Good. I have to remember. I have to be a real lawyer every once in a while. But so if you want a whole bunch of parties, you do a class certification, and there's a process that you have to make sure that they fit the class and they're real people, and you can't just have judges issue decrees that essentially they're Congress that gives relief to the world, right? Again, robes, not capes.
Can you explain the emergency docket at the Supreme Court and how that works?
Yeah, the emergency docket, we have just about a minute left. I was a Gorsuch clerk twice on the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals in Denver, and then I did it for 3 months as an elderly law clerk when he got confirmed to help him get set up, right? And so what the Supreme Court has is called the emergency docket. The liberals used to love it when liberals controlled the Supreme Court. Then President Trump transformed the Supreme Court to the first constitutionalist majority in 90 years. And yeah, they'll disappoint us from time to time, but they're largely good, right? But so we have this emergency docket. Now that the conservatives, the constitutionalists, control the Supreme Court, they call it the shadow docket, right? Because it's a bad thing now for the Democrats. And what the shadow docket is they'll hear death penalty, they hear emergency cases, on injunctions, on death penalty, on issues where you have to have an immediate order before you get to the merits. And so it could be the Supreme Court's issuing an injunction, you're not going to kill that guy until we hear the merits of this thing in a month or whatever, right? that with the emergency docket, the Democrats, again, used to love it, now they hate it because they lost the votes. But that's where the Trump administration, and I'm going to praise this before we get off here, I really want to praise President Trump and his team, right? He has bold and fearless lawyers working for him, right? And David Warrington, who used to run the RNLAs, the White House counsel, and his team in the White House counsel's office are doing a phenomenal job. And so are so many others like non-lawyer Stephen Miller, you heard from Kristi Noem, Tom Homan, but the DOJ team, I know Pam, I love Pam, and I know she takes criticism for some things, but she is doing a phenomenal job as the Attorney General. She's winning monumental wins at the Supreme Court. I think you said 21? Yeah. I mean, those are unheard of numbers that Pam is winning at the Supreme Court. So the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, the Deputy Attorney General, Todd Blanche, the incoming associate, the number 3 Associate Attorney General, Stanley Woodward, the Solicitor General, John Sauer, Harmeet Dillon, Kash Patel, the FBI, Dan Bongino. These are big personalities, but they're doing phenomenal work for the president. They understand that they work for the Attorney General, works for the President of the United States, who's elected by all Americans. The Justice Department is not independent of the President of the United States. That's how you get the deep state. And this is the President's Article 2 power. He has the executive power, all executive power. President Trump, the first time he had never run for office, he had never served in office. He did a lot of things right, including transforming the Supreme Court and the lower federal courts. I played a small part in that on the Senate Judiciary Committee, and then with Article 3 project. President Trump is ready to lead, and he was ready to lead on day one this time. And he doesn't need this job. He has a better house, he has a better airplane, he has a better helicopter. He doesn't need this. But, after the Mar-a-Lago raid, I went down there to Mar-a-Lago and I said, you're going to run. You have to save this country. And that's exactly what he's doing. He's saving this country. It's what the American people elected him to do. It's his Article 2 power, and these judges need to get the hell out of his way. So, that's it. We're over the time, but I really appreciate all you guys are doing. I really appreciate that the Michigan Republican Party got their act together this last election and really, really delivered. So congratulations.
Join me in thanking Mike.
Thank you, guys.